All right, this is Tracy Dent with Pete Morelli from Holden Advisors. Pete, thank you for being here.
Great to be here.
For those watching, Pete is a vice president at Holden Advisors. He is the head of our sales consulting practice. And I wanted to do this video to discuss some of the things that you're seeing lately in sales and with our clients. So
Fantastic. Love it.
let me start with, there's a number of different reasons why people come to us for help. I think today we look at the broad umbrella of companies that are tapped out on growth. So I know there's a lot in that, but let's start with, how are people describing their issues? What kinds of things are people telling you about kind of from the jump?
Sure. I mean, I think contextualizing that in the environment we're in today with effectively a recession that's felt, 2 weeks away for 52 weeks in a row, people are as equally hesitant about where things are headed as they actually are concerned with trends in their own business. And so let me explain more. There's many clients and prospects we talk to who actually have a generally healthy business today, but are worried about what comes next tomorrow. And then there's other ones who are already experiencing what this flat projected growth is anticipating in their business today. So they're saying, we have a portfolio of solutions that we sell. Some of our best customers, if we have 10 products or solutions, they already buy 8 of them. And the other 2, there's a reason why they don't do it. Either it's, policy that they need to have a diversity of suppliers, or there's technical reasons why those 2 things just aren't relevant to their business. So there's kind of a challenge of, well, we have these accounts that have been great partners of ours, and now we don't really have, we've kind of tapped out and hit our ceiling on what else we can do with them, because the new customer acquisition has slowed down, and there's a lot of hesitancy for end customers to start new relationships with the types of companies that we're working with in industrials and software and professional services.
So there's like hitting the ceiling with current accounts. What else are you seeing?
Yeah, so it's hitting the ceiling with current accounts, but it's also when you think about budget constraints, sometimes it's not just hitting a ceiling, but saying, all right, well, there's some customers that are experiencing budget constraints, or they're trying to pull back on spending to kind of keep cash flow for other purposes, whether it's, just keeping the lights on or investing in other areas, or just preparing for what might be a slow period ahead. And I think there's a hesitancy or a competitiveness that our customers are feeling that say, hey, well, where are our clients or customers going to go? We need to make an option for them. And I think that's another issue that we're seeing, is how can we keep the customers and retain them, the ones that we have, in a way that's meaningful, even if their spend is flat or honestly even down for another year from now before they get back to their traditional growth patterns.
So with maybe we just talk about the second one for a bit, because I'm thinking this is where people really have issues with demand for discounting and saying this is really all we have for budget, but we don't want to lose the service. That's where that all comes into play.
Yeah. And so I guess in terms of what you might do about that, I mean, think about this as like it's almost innovating down or creating a flanking product. So sometimes there's a monolithic solution where there's really only one option. Like we sell this version of a product, and we sell maybe a premium version of a service or product, and we don't have kind of the entry level or more basic version of it. And kind of creating that, sometimes it's as easy as, in software, turning off some features or making the product worse in some sense. In other areas, it's figuring out like what are the true differences in the need to have versus the nice to have components of that solution. So, in software, we think about creating a product taxonomy of, basically core and premium features, but in all industries, you can kind of create that hierarchy and then kind of figure out, okay, well, maybe we need to make a more basic version and kind of assign those components to that. So it's going to save our customers a little bit of money. It really keeps them inside our 4 walls and kind of keeps that relationship going during a period of uncertainty.
So I guess with the flanking product, the biggest challenge is figuring out how do you make the product, to point, like how do you make the product a match for the price, right? And like take things out of the existing offer.
That's right. That's right. And maybe, I mean, we just talked about it in context of for a given set of customers or your current portfolio, but it might be that that flanking product or worse version actually opens the door to reaching new customers or a new segment. And in some cases, that can actually grow that portion of your business. You know, at all times, certainly people talk about the economy being broadly in, you know, a growth period or a recessionary period. But if you look at your portfolio at a more micro level, there's going to be components of that that at any given moment are in growth mode, are in flat, are declining. And I think that's true at all times. It's just in certain periods, the growth either outweighs the decliners or churn, and in other periods, the churn or the downside outweighs the growth. And so I think in this sense, I'm saying there could be an opportunity to actually grow with new customers for some of these flanking products that you create.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would be curious about is how do you discern when this is a good strategy? Where do you look for places to kind of open this up? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think really the first place is probably just when your sales team is getting hit with the, hey, uh, I need some room here. There's a renewal coming up and there's hesitancy to do so. You kind of just get I think it's more of an anecdotal feel of, hey, there's price pressure here where there wasn't before. Obviously, we're in and maybe at the tail end of a period that has been very inflationary. And I think largely customers have been accepting and understanding that supply chains have been broken, input costs have been going up, both from labor and materials perspectives, and generally they've been accepting the price increases. And I think now we're coming to a point that's more balanced, that customers are certainly pushing back on these increases. And that is going to come through via the sales channel as either new agreements or renewing agreements are coming up.
Yeah, I guess the worst thing would be that you give the discount and then you're using the same amount of company resources to serve that account.
Yeah.
Have you seen any places or examples where the flanking product was like either kind of a surprising approach or something that the company wasn't expecting? Just places where you've seen this be successful?
Yeah. So maybe I'll give an example. We just talked about innovating down. Maybe I'll talk about innovating up.
Yeah.
So you can think about that situation we talked about where maybe for certain customers, you've already sold, 8 products into a customer when you have a portfolio of 10, for example. And then it's like, well, what else can we do? And I think this is an approach that we've taken with customers where you kind of got to find out, well, what else can you do? And so this is a little more co-creative approach and really understanding what else it is your customer could do, what else you might be able to solve for them. It's probably not an existing SKU or solution that you make today. Maybe it's a combination of a couple things or actually developing something new. But if you can kind of talk to your customer and have that relationship that you get to say, okay, well, what are your biggest problems? What are your pain points? Maybe it's something that's just adjacent to what you normally work with them and partner with them on. And then you kind of develop this long list of things and say, well, if we could solve this problem, this would be worth mutually millions of dollars to them. And therefore, if we could figure out how to charge for it based on this improvement we're driving, we can also make a fair share of that value. So I think if you can investigate what are 5 things we might do, then you can start to think about how feasible is it for us to actually go and do that between product development or technology. Kind of, in some industries, it's a little bit easier to think about, if you think about software, it's probably easier to combine some different features or different products together than it might be if you're in specialty chemical manufacturing and you need to develop something, brand new from scratch to solve a problem. Right. So there's different levels of feasibility around that. But I think if you can get a stacked rank order of what you might do, then you can start working together to make something.
Yeah. How would you go about ranking them?
I mean, really just 2 factors. I think if you build a business case around it to say, okay, well, what is either the increased revenue that it's going to drive for a client? What's the reduction in cost that it will deliver for them, or some mitigation of financial risk or liability? If you kind of size those for, each of those 5 items and say one's worth 5, one's worth 10, and one's worth 20, and something in between for the other ones, then you can kind of state the other dimension, just your factor of what's the feasibility or how difficult it is for us to do that. That might be internal resources. We need 3 new developers to work on this for a period of 1 year. We need to acquire a new business to do it. There could be different levels, orders of magnitude on how easy or difficult that is. And I think if you have, your 2x2 and you can kind of select the ones that are highest impact and the easiest for you to deliver, that's probably where you start. And then the ones that are a little bit more difficult, but still worth a large opportunity are the ones that you think more carefully about planning a roadmap to achieving.
Yeah, love a 2x2.
Everyone does. It is consulting.
All right, so can you think of examples of just places where you've seen this work for a company?
Yeah, so we were working with a data services company, and basically one of their key accounts in like retail and restaurant space had purchased multiple products of theirs, and basically there was a kind of a mutual investigation of, well, what are the other things that we might deliver from our collective core competency into that business, and identified a list of 10 plus things and sized those opportunities and created pursuit plans and aligned technology teams around that. And effectively, they have this and they're out pursuing that co-creation opportunity right now. Some of those were single digit millions of dollars, others were tens of millions of dollars. And so I think that those are the 2 things that kind of break into the do now and go after quick, and then pursue long term and think more carefully about what resources you invest into that.
Yeah,
I think for yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think just like your customer being a little, in today's environment, be a little unwilling to purchase large items, big ticket items, and make big changes in terms of who they're working with. The same goes for investments from a given company right now. They're more apt to say, yep, I see a very targeted reason why I want to pursue this. It's a chunked out investment I can get my arms around. It's not going to be a 3-year commitment to do with an uncertain payout. And I think those kind of smaller, shorter term projects are the ones that companies are more interested in investing in today.
Yeah, it makes sense. The other thing I've heard you talk about lately is just the way that people are spending their time, this is just what made me think of it in terms of how you're talking about prioritizing which products to create. There's like the sales force, how they're spending their time qualifying leads and negotiating, and kind of like the higher level picture of how people can learn about the buyers.
Yeah, I think
other category. Yeah.
I think if you can think about, good question. So it's kind of coming down to efficiency of resources to a degree and how you deploy them. So if you think about your given footprint, with your sales team as being the team that you go to market with, they're the pointy end of the spear, and they're the ones that are talking to your customers, whether it's a new logo acquisition or growing an existing book of business in the portfolio. How they spend their time is so important. And obviously, I think there's a couple of things. First of all, if you think about just the head count or where people live, what counts they focus on, the whole pandemic really upended the way that companies think about territory planning. So now maybe someone that was geographically dedicated to a group of accounts in the Southwest, for example, well, maybe now you can actually have a salesperson that's in the Pacific Northwest that handles those accounts. And so you can almost think about dividing your sales team more by function or by industry or some other way that kind of makes sense, or by, just new logos as opposed to region. So that's just one example. But in terms of efficiency of resources and directing them in terms of how they spend their time, I think just being able to qualify your leads and where you spend your precious limited time on is really important. So for example, if you know the type of buyer that you're dealing with, you can kind of better cater what you even offer, or during the discovery process, what you learn about them, and therefore what you do. So, we have 4 buyer types. We think about price buyers caring very much and almost only about price. Give me the bare minimum requirements, give me the lowest possible price. Then you have a relationship buyer that actually looks to you for your expertise, and they really need the guidance on what to buy. They're willing to pay more for that partnership. And that's a very important aspect of that relationship. Then you have value buyers who probably have a few different vendors they work with. They really understand the ins and outs of the ROI. They have a very clear reason for working with folks, but they're also willing to pay for additional value if you can prove that it's worth it. And then finally, there's a buyer type we call poker players, and they are the ones that are actually relationship buyers or they're value buyers. So they care about the value, but they pretend to be a price buyer during the negotiation phase, and they try to get you to lower the price to give away the farm for something that's a discount. So I think if you understand those four things, it better allows you to allocate where you spend your time. You don't want to necessarily spend too much time in, say, an RFP where maybe you were a late add to the process, and it's a very much just a competitive situation where even if you win, your margin will be so low that it's not going to help your business that much. Whereas if you know you have a value buyer or relationship buyer that cares about what you deliver, then that's probably more worth your time. And I guess that does two things. One, at kind of the top of the funnel, it allows you to put things in your funnel that mean more, have a higher expected probability of winning. So it kind of helps you fill that funnel with the right things. And then towards the bottom, bottom of the funnel, without even changing your price, you can think about being able to better negotiate against or maintain prices with a given type of customer type, buyer type, without even, the higher margins, higher realized prices at that negotiation end when you understand how they're going to behave and what tactics they'll deploy to try to throw you off your game.
Yeah. I would imagine there's so much time that can get wasted in those interactions. Like, I guess there's the calls and the back and forth and the emails, and then the strategizing internally and aligning people around what you're going to do and what you're not going to do. But like all of the time that can get spent trying to figure out the right moves with those things that are very far down the line, and kind of front loading that earlier in the process so that you're streamlining a lot of those strategies.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these conversion steps too, if you think about it, small incremental percentages make a huge difference. I mean, I don't have to do math, but if you have 10% of your customers that go from stage 3 to stage 4, and you find something about the buyer types and you focus on right types of customers and you increase that to 15%, it's not that big of a difference when you think about it nominally, but that's a 50% bigger conversion rate. So those are the
Right,
that's what
especially
matters. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you've got these big companies with these high volume, and when that all adds up, when you've got lots of salespeople and lots of leads that they're working through and all that.
Knowing which are your growth accounts versus which are your maintenance accounts is a really important thing to differentiate. You can think about, there's obviously size of account, but certainly how fast it's growing are kind of the two factors. Like, what are the expansion opportunities? And so if you can kind of bin out the ones that are maintenance accounts, like, yeah, whether they're large or whether they're small, but if there's not really a big opportunity to grow, then that sort of helps time box how much of your given sales time that you allocate to them. And I think the reason this is so important is because most salespeople we talk to at the top end of things, they're only selling directly to customers 50% of their day. Like, there's enough overhead with, your internal meetings, your planning, your travel, recording information in Salesforce, troubleshooting accounts, kind of more account management type functions. Like, hey, we've got billing issues, we've got invoicing issues, we've got some technology or implementation issue that you end up getting involved in, and it's not actually selling new products or new logos. It's just dealing with what you got. So in the best case scenario, you kind of have 50% of your day that you can sell. So allocating that to the accounts that matter is really important. So we often help folks parse out that distribution of, like I said, growth versus maintenance accounts, so you can really focus on the ones that matter.
It seems to me like a lot of at least these shorter projects that you've done lately, focus on how to kind of step in and adjust where people are focusing, giving them kind of getting them on the right path, and then stepping out so that they can execute in a more effective way. That's
right. Yeah. And I think at least for us, the appetite is certainly more set our direction and let us do it, because I think two reasons. One, there's just budget constraints around, and folks want to be efficient with their time. They want to know what the right thing to do is, and then they want to take, even if it's a little bit of risk on their part, they would rather save the expense on, a project and do the right thing and just trust themselves to do that. So take a little risk on that end. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably the main driver of it. And then I think also, if you just think about the labor market the last few years, there's been an opportunity and some increasing turnover in tech recently and consulting industry to some degree, that the in-house talent pool for these types of roles has actually improved. So I think there's been some natural turnover that has allowed a little more expertise to come in-house. So a little bit more confidence with the teams that are taking these recommendations and running with them. So I think there's probably a little bit more capability on some of our client part too.
It's good. Goes a long way, I'm sure. All right. So in general, with like this recession, I think the Wall Street Journal said like the recession that's always 6 months away. Like, why has this felt like this for so long? But people, in general, there's like the hesitation. People are a little bit conservative with taking risks. So just high level, any guidance that you would give broadly for companies in that scenario right now?
I mean, I think it's really understanding, like, I guess there's two ways to think about it. One is, even in this batten down the hatches sort of mindset, there's a couple things. Even if you're going to batten down the hatches, maintaining your current book of business is not something that's just a static exercise. There's always going to be kind of natural churn, and you don't want to forget about your at-risk accounts, or how do I maintain these companies in my book of business? And that could be just around giving them the right attention and making sure you're delivering on the promises that you've kind of committed to them. And then there could be opportunities to innovate or create a place for them to go that they stay with you. And then I think on the growth side, I think just the point about there's always going to be portions of your portfolio that are in growth mode, that are flat, and that are in decline. So it's recognizing that there's going to be opportunities within the companies you work with, your end customers, to grow will always be true. It just might not be the majority of them. So identifying where those pockets are of opportunity are often something that we help with.
All right, cool. All right, I have to say, because you're like kind of always on the road, but you're especially on the road in the next couple of weeks because you've got a few different speaking
Conference
things.
season,
So first,
conference season.
yeah, exactly. So first is Dallas, and then is what, San Diego. So can you just talk a little bit about your sessions that you have coming up?
Yeah, so it's I'll just go in order. So in Dallas, we have PPS, and that's really helping pricing people think about how best to work with salespeople. When just obviously all the science of setting prices, the pricing people at PPS know all of that, but then bringing the perspective in from kind of my side of the house on how best to position what the pricers do as part of their everyday, all day, every day mind share towards just setting up pricing so that salespeople can take it and run with it in a simple way, but effective way. How can they partner together to make that whole function work the best? There's kind of like, if you think about set price and get price equals realized revenue, you don't want zeros in either of those like A times B equations. You want ones and greater in both. So trying to get both those people balanced, that's PPS. And then in SAMA, which is the Strategic Account Management Association, that'll be in San Diego, their annual conference. I'll be delivering a session workshop on innovation pricing. So a little bit actually what we talked about today in terms of what are the things that matter to customers, how can we build a business case around them and prioritize them so that salespeople can actually get into the pricing weeds a little bit and get a framework and a walkaway to go approach customers with some of those ideas about whether maintaining them or building something new.
All right. Well, thank you for everything. Until next time.
Thanks, Tracy.
All right.